get started. I think we're about 5 minutes past the hour. So
would someone be so kind as to share the meeting minutes as we go along? I find it helps some people, including me.
And since I'm going to try to act as sort of a facilitator moderator, if I share, I will lose some of my Zoom view.
Oh, that's fine. I mean,
maybe I can do it from the other screen. Hang on one second.
let me, okay, that's not a bad idea.
I have the GitBOM.
Yep.
Yeah, I can do it from over here.
Excellent. One other point to make is that we run a pretty open agenda. So if there are things that folks would like to add to the agenda, please feel free to just add them. And one other thing I'll mention, just because people have a tendency to be excessively polite, if you've appended your item to the agenda and you feel that it should have higher priority, because we are probably, especially this week, going to have some things fall off the edge of the agenda time-wise, please also speak up to advocate for that early in the meeting, just so everybody gets a chance to sort of sort things out for agenda bashing. If you would prefer, Ava, I could actually share the meetings. Gesturing at the meeting minutes is sometimes a helpful thing, and it's extremely hard to do all the things at once yourself.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay, let me do that. Excellent. Can everyone see the agenda?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So if you could decrease the width of your window, it'd be easier to see.
Let me see. Hang on.
Or zoom in.
There we go. Better?
That's much better, Ed. Thanks.
Yeah.
I do appreciate folks speaking up.
So by way of intros, I'll start and then hand it off to Ed. My name is Ava Black. I'm a hacker, for lack of a better word, in the office of the CTO at Microsoft. Pronouns are they and them. And Ed and I sort of bootstrapped this idea over the past, I don't know, 9 months-ish. Ed, what do you do?
Whatever seems like a good idea at the time. So I'm Ed Warnicki. I'm a distinguished engineer at Cisco Systems. I've been involved in a variety of open source projects over the last 20 years, including a lot of open source networking, and mostly just really excited to get something clean and simple that'll make all of this much easier for everybody else. So anyone else who would like to go next? Particularly folks who haven't introduced themselves so far.
Fine, I'll go next then. Kate Stewart. Have been involved on some initial ideas in this direction back with Ed, way back when we were trying to get this all to fit within SPDX. So one of the things I'm here and interested in is how we can get the linkage happening between SPDX and being able to refer to a gitbom object in an elegant way, if possible, so that we can get that connection going. Okay, that's what I'm sort of, like to try to do my best to help facilitate that connection. And I've been in embedded open source for 20 years and focusing now on what we need to do to make sure we actually can get the information we need for doing safety analysis.
Yeah, and in case it's not clear enough on the website, gitbom is not an SBOM. So
Exactly.
We're very delighted to be working with actual SBOMs. We're trying to make the artifact tree part really simple and clean and ubiquitous, and hopefully that's useful to SBOMs.
Mm-hmm.
And Kate, I did have a chat with William Bartholomew about the SPDX3 spec and compatibility. So
cool.
Let's finish intros and then I stuck in that item in the agenda. Hopefully it'll be a quick one.
Yeah, okay, great.
Cool. Everyone, I'm Bharati. I'm from Cisco Systems. I work for the compilers and the tools group in Cisco. So Ed presented the idea of gitbom end of last year, and I just managed to catch up with a quick llvm clang prototype just a weekend ago. So I hope to share that with you today, with you all today. Thanks.
This is Yang Kui Han. I'm also from Cisco, mostly focused on software security. I'm interested in GitBOM prototyping. Thanks.
I can go next. This is Hossein Siadadi. I'm a senior security engineer at Datadog and a part of a dedicated team for software supply security. And we will be a consumer of, the tools that generate or, organize anything around SPOM. And of course, I know that the GitBOM is not exactly, SPOM, but we are looking into any tool, anything that facilitates us getting more visibility into what we are generating at Datadog and how we consume them. Glad to be here. Thanks.
So hi, I'm Yotam, currently lead vulnerability research at a cybersecurity startup based in Israel called Resilient. One of the things that we do is vulnerability validation. So hoping to contribute on that aspect.
It's super exciting to have folks who are looking to be on the consuming end.
Feedback that I would love to have early on in the process here. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I guess I can go next. So I'm Tan Ha. I currently work for Momentive. If you haven't heard of them, they used to be SurveyMonkey. I do DevOpsy kind of things, so managing CI/CD pipelines, etc. I've been around in different open source communities for a while, and I'm really interested in build related tools. And I saw Ed tweet about this, and it sounded interesting, so I thought I'd come in and see what it's all about.
Thanks for joining us.
Hi, hi, my name is Brandon. I'm a co-chair of CNCF Tech Security. And also an engineer at Google Open Source Security team working on supply chain stuff. It's exciting to see this take off, and I've been seeing a bit of the inner workings from small presentations that and documents that have been flying around. So excited to see what this becomes.
Great to have you join us, Brandon.
Hi, I'm David Pollock, otherwise known as DPP. He, him are my pronouns. I work in Cisco Secure, the office of the CTO. I'm here mostly because Ed lit a fire underneath me saying, this is cool. And whenever Ed says something's cool, it has to be. In terms of interest, I think there are a lot of different interests that I have in the GitBOM space. One is a defensive security interest, which is how do we make sure that the tree never gets poisoned? In other words, how do we have assurance that the tree is a true tree? There are also a lot of layers on top of that around security that I think are really interesting. In other words, how can you trace the reputation based on code of a particular call as it traverses APIs and systems? And I think GitBOM has the potential for answering a lot of those interesting questions. Today and for the next couple of sessions, I'm mostly lurking, but want to learn and want to understand how this fits into the bigger picture.
I will quickly dive in. Hello, everyone. VM Brasseur. You can call me Vicky. I'm at Wipro. I'm Director and Senior Strategy Advisor in the Open Source Program Office. My pronouns are she, her. I've been around free and open source software for 3 decades plus now. So I get around and many of you know me already. So hi, it's lovely to see lots of beautiful faces on the call. So Wipro is currently GitBOM curious, shall we say. So I'm keeping an eye on things at the moment to see where things are going, how it's fitting together with all the other pieces of the software security, software supply chain landscape. and where we can potentially chip in. Eventually, I hope to hand this call off to someone else who can be a bit more hands-on with it. But at the moment, I'm just gathering information and really, really loving DPP's cat.
Renamed to Cat Bomb now.
I can arrange for that to happen here too, you know.
Anybody?
I think I could go next. Or did I interrupt somebody? I'm not very friendly to latency, so I apologize if I interrupted anybody. I am Santiago. I am a professor of ECE at Purdue University. I pronounce he, him. I mostly care about how to produce software securely and how to consume software securely. Sounds like an easy problem, but it really turns out to be incredibly complicated. This is, I think, why everybody is on this call right now. My interest with the GitBOM is I'm also the lead of the Untitled project, and I think that there's very good and interesting synergies between both projects to essentially track different GitBOM trees and their relationships, and use them also as a succinct representation of everything that came up into a particular artifact, and then start to compositionally build a broader notion. I think in a sense, GitBOM plus SPDX plus Toto is my ideal trifecta to answer a bunch of questions about software supply chain security. Yeah, I think that's it. I'm very, very happy to be here.
Good. I'll go. Chris Olson, Cisco Systems as well. Been involved dabbling in software supply chain security for a number of years now. Saw this thing from Ed and wanted to dive into it and see what it was doing. You know, basically hit on it a little bit and figure out where it could be used within our software supply chain security regimen that we're working through. So thank you.
Hey everybody, my name is Alexei Kravtsov. I'm a tech lead at Cisco Systems, ex-Porchiv. So been around the open sources around security and APIs. So really interested into this work and wanted to incorporate maybe some of it in the open source that we are working on. Also regarding SBOMs, different formats to represent them, how to extract the information from processes, runtime to correlate everything back to security context, also APIs, and so super interested in this work.
Well, I'm Frederick, he, him. I am currently at Anthem. I specialize in helping very large companies move towards more modern security strategies such as zero trust. Done a lot of work with the CNCF in this respect as well. And I also am one of the people implementing one of the POCs that we're going to talk about later on. So looking forward to learning more about additional efforts that people are building.
I'm very excited to see that demo. I think we've heard an intro from everybody now. Going once, going twice. Okay. Next on the agenda is outreach to build tool communities. Ed, I think that was you adding that one.
Yeah. Effectively, amusingly, I put it directly before the POCs because we're sort of moving in that direction with the POCs, but we can go ahead and do that here. Effectively, when you look at the proposal for GitBOM, a big part of it is having the actual build tools embed the GitBOM identifier into the artifact that they're producing. And so part of this is figuring out how to reach out into the various build tool communities to look at what it would take to actually get adoption of sticking this in there. And some of that I think is going to take the form of some POCs as we figure things out. We've got some of that stuff going on with some of the llvm clang stuff. Some of that is going to be able to figure out exactly where are the linkages in the process. And I think the bomsh POC will sort of dive into the identification of a lot of the linkages that might not occur to folks at first glance. But generally speaking, we've got a lot, we're intending to be polyglot, system-wide. So to the degree that folks have ideas of other communities, particularly communities where they have friends they could reach out to, where they think we may want to reach out to those communities, I wanted to make sure to have a standing item for folks to raise those and or suggest people that they could talk to and bring into the community.
Yeah, one of the areas that doing this will flesh out for us is the difference between integrating in a compiled tool chain, Go, Rust, etc., versus a non-compiled programming language like Python or JavaScript. There's going to be differences there. We think both are possible, but we won't really know until we start to dive in. So I think this will become either a standing item in this meeting or over time, possibly a parallel meeting, just to talk about language ecosystems and language integrations.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so I just wanted to raise it again, get it in front of people's minds.
Yep. Thank you. I really want to get time for all the POCs. We have 2 items up here, one from Santiago and then the SPDX one. So Santiago, do you want to go quickly on terminology?
Sure. So here is a link to a very, very brief slideshow that I prepared. I don't know if you want to open it on the sharing screen.
Do you want to share? We're perfectly delighted to let you share if you'd like.
Sure.
Cool.
My video card is suffering a lot, so apologies if things are not working perfectly. Do you see this?
I see your screen.
Fantastic. Well, we can only see it, but not touch it anymore.
There is, okay, now it's better.
Great, okay. So do you see this? This is like the title. So I tried to write down essentially what I thought was a problem statement. Caveat, is this really a problem? This is something that we would have to discuss. Essentially, there's a couple of terms that are evocative or descriptive by itself. They're self-standing. They, if you read them, you understand what they mean. If you look at the the GitBOM spec in and by itself. However, I think this terms may be overloading, especially overloaded in the community for Git, not GitBOM. And this may be misleading or confusing for some people that are very, very eyes deep into either the Git code base or the Git specification. Now, the question that I'm putting forward today is, can we choose or modify those or just decide what we want to do? For example, another alternative would just be to say, well, these are the terms we're using, but we're going to be explicit about, well, there's this other term used in the Git context, but we don't need that. I think all of those things are fine. This is more of a, these little things, in my experience, sometimes can cause friction later down the line. And I think we're at an ideal moment to just make this a non-issue. I skimmed a little bit through the spec. I found a couple of terms. I think the big one is gitref. I was also trying to just catch a couple of them. Some of them may not be like very technical, but rather just maybe an insinuation, like the last one, which is inclusion. And I just thought that maybe just having a list of this is not exhaustive. Maybe we can just collect it, take it as something to mull over by ourselves for the week, and then just think about what this means. I think it's a little bit clearer if I talk about what the replacements could be. There was some conversation on Twitter. There's a conversation that we can have right now, although I don't know how much time we want to spend this. Git references, as in Git reference, is a movable thing, whereas Git ref is a unique identifier, and it's unique in that it cannot move. It represents a thing to the fullest extent of what Git is able to do it. On the Git world, this is generally referred to as a Git object identifier. It cannot move. It's defined by virtue of it being something. A reference in Git is usually a branch, for example. It's always moving to the next OID every time you commit, or it can be a tag in which you can try to replace it if you move the tag pointer around. So in a sense, I think we could either say, well, we're talking about Git OIDs here, or we could say a Git ref is not a Git reference. It's more closely tied to what a Git OID is. Another question that I had when I looked at the latest iteration is a Git tag is, as such, it is technically right. It is a Git. It's a tag. It's a directed acyclic graph. Now, in the Git terminology, they generally refer to tree objects. So that's what builds the tag. I do wonder if we want to just say, well, a tag usually composed of Git objects, Git tree objects. My understanding is that in the spec, when we refer to an artifact tree, we're essentially referring to the root of this tag. So we could probably disambiguate that. There is the inclusion relationship. In a sense, I think this is touching a little bit more on the intrinsics of what GitBOM would be, because it is hard to represent inclusion with the semantics. We can only do connections either by using tree objects or commit objects, which are they're funny in their own way. Overall, I think we want to use blobs, so it would be, yeah, it would be probably something that we need to think about the longer term. Are we thinking about having a long flat file as an individual tree or a collection of trees? Or then again, this is I think this is all like uncharted territory, especially this last one. But I think we can try many things and see which one is the one that that's better, more succinct and better descriptive.
For some of these, Santiago, what I'd suggest is we have a glossary on the website. Let's move some of these to discussions in an issue or PR on GitHub to change that. I think these are like Git ref to Git OID makes sense. Some of the other stuff, like the last point you raised, I think we're not going to really understand it until we start to flesh this out in a spec. And that'll take a little bit of time.
That's what I was thinking. And part of it is I don't want to be prescriptive because this is a community effort. And I don't think this is a...
So you're the furthest thing from prescriptive. I think it's really good for you to be looking at some of these things. And the perspective is very helpful because basically one of the following things is true. And so for the case of Git refs versus Gitoids, I think you've probably identified a very clear point of where we're going to produce confusion. That one seems very, very obvious to me. On the other three, you've either identified a more subtle point, or you've identified a place where we're miscommunicating some other aspect of what's going on. Yeah. I'm not entirely clear which yet, which is why I think opening issues on the sites repo for discussion on each of these is probably super productive. And we'll sort of shoo folks towards them because it turns out the hardest thing in the world is to communicate something clearly to a broad spectrum of human brains.
And I completely agree that getting terminology right at the beginning is really important. I mean, some of you have seen my work on the supply chain synthesis that I linked in chat. The whole reason I started that work last year was the confusion around terminology in a whole bunch of different groups working on supply chain stuff. So I completely agree. Getting it right is good, and your feedback is totally on point.
Thank you. Yeah, overall, I think this is something we can discuss as a community, and there's many ways forward. Right?
I do have one request of you though. As you open these issues for these, so first of all, if you're comfortable linking a publicly accessible version of this slideshow into the meeting minutes, that would be very welcome. And then as you're opening issues, if you could add them to the meeting minutes under the item in the meeting minutes, that would also be extremely helpful.
Okay, let me sure I didn't get lost.
I already added a link.
It's been a long week. So
you've
link this slide.
Yep.
The slides have been linked already, apparently. Yeah.
So slides have been linked already since Santiago, you pasted them in the Zoom chat. I just copied that into the meeting notes. So I think the only request here is for the ones where you feel like it's a term we're already using, if you could open that issue against the GitHub repo for the website.
Right, okay.
We can address it either in that issue or bring it up in the next meeting.
Yeah, and if you would be so kind as to link the issues in the meeting minutes, makes it easy to go back and find them in relation to the conversation.
Now I understood. Thank you. Perfect.
Yeah, there's one thing that has to do with the way my brain works that I've managed to turn into a semi-productive trait, which is that I drop balls all the time. And so by encouraging things to go into a logical place, it has the benefit that other people also can find them.
Right.
So.
No, I think you're on point there. As an academic, I also drop a lot of balls. so yeah, I understand.
I would like to move on just in the interest of time and check in with Kate. Do you want to have a discussion about SPDX and GitBOM now, or?
Well, there's something that's short term, and that I'd like to just make sure we've got. We're basically going to spin out a 2.3 release of SPDX in the next month or two.
Okay.
And what I'd like to do is be able to have an external reference to a GitBOM. So I'd like to know how you want it coded up, such that if there is a package of information with SPDX that you want to refer out to a Git SBOM, I'd like to sort of know the preferred syntax to incorporate in.
So I think that gets to be a little bit of a bilateral discussion in the sense that I know that we've already had a comment that came in from some other folks working in SBOM about wanting to know what a standard URN notation might be for such things.
Yuri,
I don't know. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, we're looking for Yuri's ourselves, but yeah, close enough.
Okay, so and effectively saying if you could get us at least a tentative notion what that scheme looks like, that would be helpful. And I think that's actually, it relates to other very productive discussions I think we probably need to be having on how to have external tools represent these things. So,
or link to them so that they can have their own metadata and then link into the information around it. That's what I'm sort of hoping for.
So would it be acceptable, this is jumping a little bit ahead of the agenda, but we now have a specs repo. It doesn't have anything in it yet, but it's a good place to attach issues. Would it be an acceptable thing to have someone open an issue on that, on the spec repo, so that we can go and start tracking forward, making sure we get that answered and relating together the other sorts of interests around it?
Sure.
Cool. I'm perfectly willing to go open that issue if no one else wants to. If other people want to open it, that's also fantastic from my point of view. I'm really easy on this count.
That's a great place to track it. I don't have a quick answer for you, Kate, and that's totally not where I thought you were going, which is wonderful. I'm glad we asked. Okay, let's jump into the POCs now. It'd be great to get about 5 minutes each. It's terribly short time.
It is a nice problem to have, right?
This is challenging. 5 minutes is challenging, but I suppose, so I think first up with the llvm clang stuff, Brathy, do you think you can sort of hum a few bars about kind of where you're at there?
I'll share my screen.
Please.
Okay, can you see it?
I do.
Okay. All right. So yeah, this is just a very simple preliminary prototype of what the compiler can do. So I have a simple test case. I have a file a.c that is dependent on a.h, b.h, and of course itself. These are the dependencies for a.c. So I implemented an option frecord gitbom. Currently, it piggybacks on the option -md, which computes all the dependencies. It's a preprocessor option. So currently, this is needed for it to work. And then I just compile it, and let's see what happens to a.o. So there is a section called .bom that is created in a.o. And what is the content of that section? This is basically the git ref of this file itself. And what are the contents of this file? This is nothing but the git ref of all the dependencies for a.c. So the dependencies, essentially, if you see, they are not just a.c and b.h, but also stdio.h and the dependencies that stdio.h brings in. So the git hash of all of those dependencies. This is not in sorted order, but yeah, ideally this file will be in sorted order. So and this hash, this git ref is what is embedded in the .bom section. So yeah, so currently So if you were to just assemble and not just compile, for example, then I'll show what is there, and there is a dot section. So it's basically, this is emitted as a metadata even in the assembly. And the other variant is, suppose if you emit it in the bitcode, so in the LLVM bitcode, and then I can just disassemble the bitcode, and you see again this dot bomb is embedded in the the intermediate file that is generated, the bytecode. So this is about just about 500 lines of diffs actually. So the bulk of the work is done in the Clang front end itself, and what is passed to the assembler, to the middle end, is just the hash, the 40 byte, the git ref. That is what is passed, and all the middle end does is basically take that string and write it to the .bomb section. So all the changes are localized within the front end itself. So this is all I had for the demo. The work on the linker is also pending. That will come next to be able to link the different .bomb sections and create one final .bomb for the executable. Any questions?
So it looks like from the way you've done this, where most of the work is happening in the front end, and then it's just using the back end to write it out, that this would, this would make it easy for other front ends, for other languages, to do the work in their front end, and then it could be picked up by the common back end. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So.
Sorry.
Yeah, and of course this file will be generated in .git and prescribed location.
I mean,
yeah.
There's always a lot of stuff that one can do to clean up things like where files are dropping. I've always thought of this as there's the hard problems and the easy problems. The hard problems are finding the right places in LLVM to do the work and get them linked up. The easy problems are polishing out which directory we want to put things in and those kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and what name
and
you want to use.
Yeah, it sounds like you've addressed a lot of those. Oh, I see that Nell has arrived. Nell, I don't know if you caught this demo.
Hello.
No, I'll definitely go back and watch the recording. It looks
okay,
awesome.
So yeah, so the reason I'm excited you just showed up for this demo is that if my hypothesis is correct, this would make just making changes to the Rust front end and having them pop out the back end, relatively, hopefully straightforward, which would be kind of exciting as well. And this might be a rich area of collaboration between you and Bharathi.
Awesome.
So I will comment as sort of the designated shepherder of so many of these sorts of things for Cisco, that we're almost completely through the process of getting approval to release this source code out, and we have a discussion point further down about where do we put the POCs so that folks can easily collaborate on them, because this is, I think, a really good space for people in the GitBOM community to collaborate, but we're all probably going to want to polish things a little bit and learn a little bit before we take it to the LLVM community directly.
Yeah.
So this is like super dope. I love it.
It's really awesome.
One of the things, though, that struck me as you were going through the demo is one of the dependencies is the compiler itself.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when you pull on the string, what.
So it's interesting you should mention this, and this is actually one of the issues that I'm probably going to want to open against the spec directory and drive some conversation towards, because you're both absolutely right and completely wrong at the same time. And I only say this to Dave this directly because he's an old friend, which is, yes, the compiler actually is an important part of this picture. However, it is incorrect to graft the compiler in as a subtree under the tree of things that are included into your the thing that's being built, right? It's just because it's not in the same way being included as, say, a source code file. There have been a bunch of discussions I've had over many months with people who are trying to figure out how to capture some of this stuff. But the smartest one so far came from, I believe it's Mark Shanahan at Intel, who mumbled something about, well, I have this tool and it's going to do like an enclave signing of a .so. And so the children of the resulting .so should be the incoming .so and the configuration for my tool. And that kind of got me thinking, because one of the things that comes up repeatedly when people talk about repeatable builds is suddenly they want to include the GCC command line or the clang command line that they ran. And the problem is that command line contains an insane amount of what I would call ephemera, right? So for example, if I've got a -I for the include directories, it really shouldn't make any difference whether I build this in my home directory or you, Dave, build it in your home directory. That's basically ephemera. But there are certain things like the preprocessor flags that get set, or the preprocessor variables that get set at the command line, that are actually pretty important in terms of what goes in. And so Mark's suggestion was, if the build tool can decide on, and we can make recommendations, but it's really for each build tool to figure out what its configuration looks like, that can be written out as metadata, but it can be included in the tree. And that configuration information could include things like what the build tool is, the gitbom of the build tool itself. And so you're not grafting the build tool into the tree of the resulting executable or binary object, but you are grafting some of that information about it in. And I don't even know if this is necessarily the right resulting idea. It was just an idea bouncing around. But I sort of mentioned that in practice because, again, you're both dead right and completely wrong.
One other thing, and this is Cisco internal process, if security and trust is any barrier to releasing the stuff, let me know. TK is in a lot of discussions with them, and I'll just poke him on whatever you need.
I'm literally, the only holdup for me right now is the attorney who has to press the buttons on jury duty.
Oh, okay.
It's the only thing slowing it down. So, everybody else is yay, verily yay.
Cool.
This is wonderful. But I want to time box it.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Just because we have 2 more demos to get through, and I'd love to get to the last few minutes of where do we, put the POCs when they're open sourced, when they're contributed somewhere. So trying to make sure everyone has a little bit of time today. And we really want to come back to that conversation about what goes into the BOM. Should compiler itself be linked in, or other things that are open? How do we store the flags? But next up is bomsh. Are we ready to give a demo on that one?
Yeah, sure. Let me see. I need to narrow. I cannot share my screen. So let me see. I need to click to make. Okay.
So as I've often observed, hell is unfamiliar conferencing systems. It doesn't really matter which one is unfamiliar. They're all sort of equally clumsy when you're not used to them.
Okay, now let me see. Can I share now?
I see.
Yes,
I see
now we
screen.
see it. Wonderful.
Okay, very good.
please do note we see your entire desktop. So just be aware of that.
Let's see. Yeah. So yeah, this is one. But I'm afraid families will not be enough. Oh.
Yeah. Well, if you could give us just an intro to what you've done, we can probably come back and talk in more depth in subsequent meetings.
Yeah, let me see. How do I cannot use the full screen. It will just, can I just use this? I cannot, it will be black screen.
It looks fine to me. Is this good size for everyone else?
Yep,
okay.
That's great. Yep.
So I want to be fast. So how to use this tool? Basically 2 modes, it's easy. For the bomsh bash, this is a bash-based tool. So you enter this mode, then build your software, then you generate all the GitBOM database. If using bomb trees, just prefix your build command with bomb trees, then you get everything. It works by capturing all the shell commands during software build. So basically it will be like this. This is the bomsh framework. So basically we have a bomsh create CVE to create a CVE database. And also we do the software build using bomb trees, and then it will automatically generate the GitBOM database. Then we have script to search the CVE. So at the end for OpenSL in the kernel, you'll see we'll get such a result like this. So you'll
so
see
let me pause for a moment to point out two things you glossed over really quickly.
Yeah, just like this.
You have run your tool against the kernel.
Yeah. Yes, this is the Linux kernel I just built this afternoon. And you can see we have the CVE list, fixed CVE list for the Linux kernel. And you just, this is all from the GitBOM database. You can see we have this file. We have a GitBOM identifier mapped here. Then you have this list just by search. All the detail, sorry.
I think this demo might need an entire hour for me to
go
through. Like you just
in the
built
detail,
a GitBOM for the entire Linux kernel and found all those
No, David, you missed the point. He forgot to mention that he had built the GitBOM for the entire Linux kernel. It was sort of an ephemeral detail.
Yeah. Oh, by the way.
Yes, exactly. You can see this is each line in the GitBOM line, right? We do the whole, see. For the Linux whole kernel, this is how we have the search the all the detail. You will find out detail which file, current one which CVE, and which has been fixed. The top, this is just for the through the GitBOM identifier, the whole GitBOM chain. You do that.
Yeah, so you remember Santiago when you commented on the chat? Okay, so we just lost Santiago.
And you can also search by the other way because we actually keep everything. Sorry.
So Santiago had to drop a few minutes ago to go teach a class.
Yeah. So basically, Santiago had a comment a few minutes ago. It'd be nice to represent this as a tree, and I sort of mumbled at him in the chat that you want to keep your fundamental representations really sparse, but you can build all kinds of other representations on them. And a lot of what you're seeing here is places where more complicated JSON data structures have been constructed with the bomsh and bomb trace tools that make it easier to sort of search through and walk through to find the kinds of things you want to find.
Yes. Yeah. So I think there's going to be a really good discussion we should have around the spec and in the spec repo of the actual on-disk format versus data representational formats like JSON.
So we already support Rust, Go language, Java, C language. Also
how are you supporting all of that? How are you getting the list of files that are being used in each step?
Yeah, we can capture everything, right?
To back up, what's basically happened is there's a bit of pseudo instrumentation here of capturing shell information. Which, among other things, I think eventually we do want to get all these things into the fundamental build tool so they just happen. But if you're trying to demonstrate what's possible and figure out the kinds of corner cases that you're going to be interested in, this is a very powerful tool for that. It's also very powerful because, and again, this is something for a longer demo and discussion. What Young-Kui hasn't mentioned is he's instrumented a bunch of other things and found a bunch of other corner cases. Like for those of you who have been following the mailing lists, and if you've not, I highly encourage you to subscribe. And I also encourage you to check your spam folders because for some reason, our mail is being put in some people's spam boxes. There's been a conversation going on there about sort of other tools like object copy and ranlib and elf versus GNU strip and how do you actually figure out all the various other pieces? And so in terms of plumbing those pieces out and figuring out stuff, this is a hugely fast way to get there.
Yes. So basically we are keeping this kind of information. So during software build, you can see we're generating this raw information for each shell command. So basically it's the out file, it's the checksum, and then at least the in file. That's including all the dependency for this file. And you can see for each build step, we record such information. Then we from this a list of input file to output file. We create the artifact tree and create all the GitBOM documents, and also automatically do the embedding of the .bam section into the binary, into the archive, into the jar file, and everything, completely automatic.
So in the interest of time,
stop here.
There are certain things we're going to have to work out so that we can also move this forward between now and next week. But I think we definitely would like to have a longer version of this presentation because there's just a huge amount going on.
Yes.
All of it
and
good.
if you have a either link to the code or the PowerPoint you're going to share, if they're public or publishable, could you drop them into the Zoom chat? I'll link them in the meeting notes. Next up is Frederick.
By the way, this is another one that we should have out very shortly. It's just a matter of some cleanup and getting it out the door.
Got it.
Yeah.
Last few minutes, Frederick, sorry to time compress you extra. So you want to say the last 5 minutes to talk about the actual GitHub repos for the stuff.
Not a problem, but I'm not able to share until the current share is stopped sharing.
Oh, Young Kui, could you stop sharing?
Oh yeah, sure. Let me. This is just a build of. You can see quickly 3 steps. Finish that. Yeah, it's done.
Cool. So in short, let me go ahead and share my terminal. And so to give a quick example of as to what I am working on. So I realized that there's a lot of stuff going on with GitBOM, and the goal was to provide a reference implementation that can be used that's simple, that doesn't have a lot of other things tied into it. And so if people want to understand what GitBOM is, they can go to the spec. They want to see a implementation that's more in detail, then this is available, and also available for them to include in other things as well. So they don't have to go off and implement all these on their own. The key behind this is there's a few interfaces. This is probably the most important one. I'll eventually change the terminology based upon the outcome of the terminology discussions that we have. Like right now, this says like add a SHA-256 based reference, which is based upon an object, and you can pass in a BOM that's been identified, and you can also pass in through a reader, so we can handle data of arbitrary size. And so you pass in that particular reader, and it'll go through the whole thing. And then there's things about how do you actually get the references out of it? How do you provide the actual implement? The one on the very top, identifier, provides the ability to call an identifier itself. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Interface identifier. Anyways, I'm not pulling it up real quick, but yeah, so that provides a function in an interface that allows you to ask like what is the ID, what is the BOM ID of this particular thing. And then I also wrap this around inside of a command, so we can actually run GitBOM based commands. So first, to give example as to what we will see. So in this particular one, we have a couple files in here that represents the actual GitBOM source code itself. And so I'm able to run GitBOM star, and that actually ends up producing a hash ID that represented all of this above. If I check into the actual file that it produced, you'll see this 4D, 7AA, etc. It's represented by inside of the directory 4D/7AA, etc. We cat that, you can see all of the blobs that have been listed. So if we do like git hash object, and we'll pick one, let's say like go.mod. We can see 7D99. You see 7D99 is referenced in here as well. So we see that connection there. Let me take it a step further, and this will very likely, I'm going to change the input format of this a little bit, but you could also do, let's say go bin GitBOM, which is where the file is currently located, bomb star. Let me see, oops, I did the wrong. you see this actually produced a hash that we can look at, and if we investigate what that looks like, we have AA. This matches the ID that was just produced, and if we see this actually has the bomb directive in here, followed by this 4D7AA722, which happens to be the same thing as this up here. So we have basically said that this file, which if we do git hash object go bin gitbom, you can see that it matches. So you can see that that particular thing we've declared is reference to this particular thing. Now, I want to be a little bit careful here because this represents an external thing that's not actually the compiler producing this. So the best case scenario is the compiler is producing these particular artifacts. But this also provides two primary things. So first is that if the compiler doesn't produce it, we still have a way of integrating gitbom to some degree. It just, the accuracy is at risk because of possible mistake by the programmer. And simultaneously, this particular thing though does represent something that we could use to help communicate. Like if I have a specific idea and I want to be clear, 100% clear as to what it is, it's like, okay, well, we have an implementation that we have here that's simple that can be used to help other implementations. So that was the primary purpose behind this.
This is wonderful. It's a reference implementation that other folks can sort of test conformance against. That's the direction you're thinking this might head?
Exactly.
Great. Yeah, I've used that same technique in projects with standards in the past, and I think that's something we definitely need to have.
Cool. We got 4 minutes, so I'll yield the rest of the time.
Thanks you for the great demo, Frederick. So last question that I think we're going to have time for today, the rest will just get overflowed to next week, is where do we create a space in the GitBOM GitHub org to house these proof of concepts, or Frederick's like reference implementation? I think an answer is yes. Another answer is not, be able to keep them in their own repos, and we can just link to them to help raise awareness of them. And I wanted to ask, do folks have strong opinions on this? And I see Vicky's hand go up.
So I think that's a larger existential question about the GitBOM organization. Moving things under the GitBOM organization now implies that they are a part of GitBOM. And so where's GitBOM going to go? Is it going to go into OpenSSF? Is it going to go under a completely different thing? Is it going to stay independent? And those projects are going to travel with it, most likely. And so should probably resolve the first before we resolve the second. So in the meantime, they can stay in their own repositories, and you can link to them, obviously, in the GitBOM on their webpage and stuff like that. And then once you have a home, then I think it makes sense to move in as many projects as feel comfortable doing so. But at that point, they are willfully saying, yes, we are a part of GitBOM.
And so that raises the second question here, which is the spec repo.
Yeah, if I may actually though, I'm interested that you saw it that way, because I had actually been thinking sort of the opposite direction. Because when I think about particularly the LLVM work, that's really a question of providing. Obviously, LLVM is never moving under GitBOM in any proper sense, but we do have a bunch of collaboration that needs to happen, and that needs to have a proper collaborative home to work from. And that makes a lot of sense to me under the GitBOM repo. And we have other tools that are sort of being
not the GitBOM repo, to clarify, the GitBOM org.
I'm sorry, the GitBOM org. Yes, the GitBOM org. And we've got other things like bomsh, but then we have, my general gut feeling would be that if you have a tool related to GitBOM, and you're happy with where it's living as its own repo, then obviously we want to refer to you from the community page, right?
I think.
But if you're basically looking for a space because you've got, for example, like multiple people who need to collaborate on moving this tool forward, having that under a proper org instead of sitting under somebody's user ID can often be very helpful. And so I think you sort of want to look at how do we sort of move these forward in terms of things coming and going. I mean, this is a GitHub world; things can come and go quite easily.
So, Vicky, sorry, Elliot, let me just address this real quick. I think Vicky's got a really good point. That does need to be considered. What is the And we do need to touch on the spec repo and how or where that spec eventually might land if we want this to become a standard, right? Some orgs like IETF or OpenSSF are better at facilitating the growth of a specification standard versus code, and some look for both. So,
just to add on this, you guys really are looking for critical mass. And as somebody who, uses a fair amount of tooling, if I see it under somebody's personal repo, personal name, I think it's a toy, usually, right? That's my first impression. I may be wrong, but that's how I perceive it. So the faster you get the faster you bring the tools together, the faster that people can see that there's one central locale in which they can contribute, the better you will be at getting critical mass, which is what any standard organization is going to look for anyway.
I think part of it is a lot of these are sort of important questions, but and this may just be my bias personally, I'm very much a bias towards getting things done kind of person, and facilitating people being able to collaborate on producing working code. So like the thing that would make me happiest would be getting a bunch of folks contributing together on sorting out what an LLVM contribution would look like. So then we can move that upstream to LLVM. But sort of putting a pause on forward momentum to sort of figure out administrative details would concern me somewhat.
I don't think this is pausing anything. I don't think there's any negative in having things under somebody's personal account. Also, most everyone here is under the aegis of some organization or company. So they can always, if it's something that they're doing on company time, they already have to get approval. You can put it under your company's GitHub, right? There's processes for that, possibly. But regardless, I don't think we're blocking anything by waiting. There are ways to move forward, and I think this is a larger conversation since we're over time.
Feels very blocking to me. Also, I usually write off things I find under corporate orgs as being corporate twice.
And
like
Elliot
very rarely
does the
do I take
opposite.
this seriously.
Right. Elliot doesn't do something if it's under personal. So
no, but there's not just corporate and personal. There's org and personal,
true.
and then there's the company org.
Larger conversation, it sounds like.
Larger conversation. We are 2 minutes over time.
Code that we're hoping to land out
Thank you
this
all
week.
very much. I don't hear anyone blocking putting some code in the GitBOM GitHub org if that is desired. And at the same time, Vicky did raise a good question for folks to consider before they contribute their code to an org. What does that mean for the longevity of their code? Or their employer may have an opinion on that. Both good questions, both valid paths. Thank you all. I look forward to next week. And please join the mailing list because it looks like we might need to spin up multiple meetings to contain all of this awesomeness. And if we do, we'll announce it on Twitter and the mailing list and Slack. So thank you all. See you next week.